record? Okay. CAPE has been hosting these public events since last summer to encourage this exchange of ideas with artists, educators, and different organizations. And for those of you new to CAPE or Chicago Arts Partnerships in Education, we're a Chicago-based arts nonprofit that provides arts integration to public schools around the Chicagoland area. We're really interested in research-based contemporary arts that challenge us to see the world in new and complex ways, and these public events are part of this exploration. And we're really excited to start this event, and so I'll let Amber take it away from here.
Hi everyone, as Jenny mentioned, I'm Amber Montgomery. I'm a program coordinator at CAPE. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a Black woman. I am in front of a white wall and there's nothing behind me. My hair is also pretty big today. What is the body? So as Jenny mentioned before, we've been doing at CAPE these dialogue series for the past few months now. And coming to the question, what is the body? We've all this year been confined in maybe our own homes or work environments on a virtual screen. And it made us consider, you know, what is engagement, what is teaching, what does learning look like with our bodies right now while we're all separate. In our discussion with the amazing artists that we're going to present to you in a moment, the questions that have come up with us specifically with that larger umbrella question is how is the body a tool for creating work? How is it a experimental space? And how is it a vessel for our ancestral knowledge? So I'm so honored to introduce our three speakers. Jenny, you want to take that away?
Yes, so our first speaker is Michelle Miles. She's a multimedia artist whose work is informed and conceptually underpinned by her experience as a disabled woman. Miles' work has been screened at festivals, including the Sundance Film Festival and the LA Film Festival, and was recognized at the Kennedy Center in July 2020 for the 30th anniversary of the ADA. And Kealoha Ferreira hails from Oahu, Hawaii. She's a dance artist of Native Hawaiian, Filipino, and Chinese ancestry. She moved to Minnesota in 2011 and began working with social justice dance company Ananya Dance Theater in 2013. And lastly, Ayako Kato established her dance company, Ayako Kato Art Union Humanscape in 1998, and has since been active as a choreographer, dancer, educator, and curator. She is also a CAPE teaching artist. So thank you all for joining, and Michelle will start us off.
Yeah, do you want to do the land acknowledgement first?
Sure. Yeah, okay. So in our first kind of brainstorming discussion of what this event was going to be, the question of land acknowledgement and came up, and I offered to lead us through more of an embodied experience of a land acknowledgement today. It requires us to do a little bit of self-excavating, right? Excavating our own landscapes. So if you have pen and paper or something that you want to just jot notes down on, that would be a great time to pull it out for yourself. And while you do that, I'll just share with you a little bit of the context that I come from. So I'm born and raised in Hawaii. I'm also part Native Hawaiian, and I've been in a practice of learning about oli, which is kind of a vibrational practice of voice.
Made it in the meeting.
Hi. Of resonating with landscape, and also I think relatives, right? Like plant relatives, water relatives, animal relatives, our own relatives. And I also come from a practice of pranam, which comes out of the dance form that I practice, which is called yorcha. And so I've taken these two forms and kind of merged them together to create this experience, which we'll share in today. So with your first question to think about and just write down whatever comes out for you is, the name of the lands of your birth. Whether you know them or have an idea of them, just whatever comes to you as the names of the lands of your birth. Very simple. Yeah. Simple and loaded. Simple and loaded. And if you happen to know the indigenous name for those lands, that's awesome to also, or the multiple names for that land, it's awesome to utilize and incorporate all of those names. Okay, second question. Name the land that currently feeds you now. So we live in a very global diasporic context. We might not be living in the places where we were born or we feel like we come from. And so name those lands now for you. And again, multiple names is good. It's good. Let me write it in the chat. So first question. Okay. Third question is name the mountain or the hill or the high point that feeds you now. So however you want to interpret that. If you have a place that's near you that you know, maybe it's a park that's up on a hill, and that's the high point of your kind of day-to-day landscape. If there's a mountain nearby, a vista point. And if you don't know like a name for it, that's okay. You name it in this moment. So name the high point. And then lastly, well, not quite lastly, two more. Name the water that nourishes you now. Maybe it's a lake, maybe it's a river, maybe it's a spring, maybe it's the ocean. Cool. Okay, and then this is the last question. Take a moment to maybe reconjure those places for yourself. And if it feels better to close your eyes, do so. Go ahead and do that. And as you walk through these landscapes, these places, come up or identify a natural process or an image that you would like to amplify in this moment. For instance, it is springtime right now in Minnesota, and there is rain that's dripping down, and I know that it's feeding and kind of reswelling all of the beautiful buds and green grass that's growing. That could be an image that I want to amplify in this moment. Maybe it's a slightly larger natural process, right? Maybe it's maybe for whatever reason, the image of fire feels really present today. And so the process of forest fires and the land burning, but understanding and knowing that that is what allows the seeds to open and sprout. So let this be in a short way, like a little blessing or a truth or a dream that you are going to offer, in this moment. And there's no pressure, doesn't have to be perfect, but whatever is relevant and present has meaning as well. And so those are good things. Maybe it's the tweeting of a bird, particular color, or the seeding of a native plant, or a plant that you know has a lot of, that offers a lot of richness and resource to your area. Some type of blessing or truth. Okay, and then when you feel like you've gotten those kind of settled, we're gonna walk through with each other a way to interweave these elements a little bit. So I come from traditions or practices where land acknowledgement isn't a special or rare occurrence. It's something that happens every day. Particularly with Oli and Oli Komo, it's an asking to enter, and it's also a waiting to receive permission. So kind of, and you would utilize it from anything to like really sacred ceremony, all the way up to going to grandma's house and maybe announcing yourself and asking for permission from your own grandmother to come in, or entering your classroom. Teachers are often huge practitioners of this, waiting for their, having their students ask for permission and bring themselves into that embodiment of learning. So here's what we're gonna kind of try this out for ourselves, and know that perhaps this could be a way for us to engage with creating relationship to the places and the place that we come from and that we're on every day. So wherever you are, you can choose to stand, you can choose to sit, you can be on or off camera. Find a way to ground yourself in this moment. And it might feel good to just close your eyes or participate in this whole thing with the eyes closed. That's okay. Notice where your breath is. And let's take a collective inhale through the nose and out. With whatever part of your body, maybe it's your hands, maybe it's turning your whole self or your feet, trace a circle, and you can take your time. There's no particular way that it needs to happen, but we're allowing that geometry to bring us into that place of connection, the reminder of circularity. Using our hands when you've come back to that central point, embody reaching for yourself. And as you do that, maybe it's extending your arms up, maybe it's just opening your chest, maybe it's lifting your eyes or your chin, maybe it's fully coming to a standing position. Just take a moment to reach and extend, thinking about that high point that feeds you. The high point which draws water down from the atmosphere, pulls it down into the earth, makes it accessible for ourselves, air rushing in. You can say those names of those high points in your mind or in your space. On an exhale, embody lowering or reaching low. So maybe that's just sending our energy down into our feet. Maybe that's taking a moment to touch the ground. Maybe that's coming into a child's pose position. But coming into the land, allowing yourselves to feel a moment of familiarity with this sense of ground. Maybe saying the names in your head or in your space, the lands of your birth. Thinking about the water that nourishes us, the aquifers, the lakes, the riverheads, the oceans. And then taking an inhale and coming to a seated position or to an upright position, maybe that's on your knees. And just find a shape of humility for yourself for a moment. After we've connected and honored the names of places that we relate to, that we understand our lineage to come from, we honor their autonomy. Humbling ourselves to ask permission, even when historically that has not been the case. Even as we are perhaps active in the perpetuation of settler colonialism. Of slavery, of forced migration. We humble ourselves to all of those systems, those lineages. We come to the life-giving source of the land that's beneath us. We make right with ourselves. All right. Then taking our hands together, you're going to speak, or in your mind or into your space, the blessing, the offering that you have for this place, for this moment in time. Hold it in your hands. And then we're going to clap twice and release it. Plant it into this place. Plant it into the space. Inhale and clapping twice. Release it out. Release it out. Wonderful. And clear yourself of that ritual. Took 15 minutes. Boy. Thank you. That's our land acknowledgement for today. Maybe, do I pass it back to Michelle?
Yes, I think it has been passed to me. So one moment, let me share my screen with everyone. I have a few monitors happening in front of me. So if you see me looking in different directions, that is what's happening. All right. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes,
All right,
we
great.
can. Thank you. Yeah.
And let me just pull up the chat so I can see that too. This is the process of virtual presenting. All right, I think we're set. So hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Miles and my pronouns are she, her. I'm a white woman with sort of long brown hair down on my shoulders. I'm wearing a green top in a room with cream colored walls with a white dresser behind me with a plant on top and a brown bookshelf on the other side. And it's not pictured in the frame, but I am sitting in a power wheelchair. So I was invited here today to respond to the question, what is the body? Which is such a question. So to be upfront, I certainly don't have an answer to this question, but one of the ways that I have been thinking about what is the body that has kept coming to mind is thinking about the body as an experience. And just to begin, I'd like to invite you all to think about your body and what experience you're having in it right now. So I'm going to pose this question in the chat.
Hey, Michelle, there's a little box thing that's blocking a part of your presentation.
Oh, there is. Is it my presenter view?
Oh, there you go. You're good.
Okay, great. That's interesting. Can you see the presentation too?
Yes.
Yep.
All good.
Okay, great. I guess those two windows are connected. Okay, so as I was saying, I'm going to pose this question in the chat now. So feel free to respond now or at any time throughout the presentation. Just think about the experience you're having in your body and trying to verbalize that. So personally, for me, my body is feeling a little bit of nervousness because I'm presenting about something, and that's typically my body's response to presenting. And of course, presenting remotely in the virtual realm, there is space for technical issues, which I've already experienced. And I think I'm also feeling a little nervous because I don't have an answer to that question of what is the body. But I'm feeling really excited and grateful to have this opportunity to explore some ideas with you and with the other artists today. So what I'm going to do is introduce myself and my artistic practice a little bit, and then share a little bit about a few of my pieces, just to kind of see what answers that I find in regard to the question, what is the body? And I encourage you to continue sharing your thoughts in the chat, because I always learn new things about myself and my work when I talk about it with other people. So this is very much a process of discovery for both of us. So the image on the screen here is an image of me, a white woman with my hair tied in a bun, sitting in my motorized wheelchair. My back is to the camera, viewing a Klein Blue painting by Yves Klein. And my chair and I are appearing in silhouette against an otherwise stark white gallery. And behind me in the foreground of this image, the floor is covered in blue pigment. So I'm a multimedia artist. As Jenny mentioned, I work primarily in film, but I do dabble in other mediums. I began as a painter and sketching when I was younger, and then I transitioned to photography and film, and I dabbled a little bit in installation and sculpture, and recently picked painting back up again a little bit. So I'm kind of all over the place with exploring different artistic mediums. And often I'm working in response to the physical limitations that I am met with. So I'm often thinking about the barriers that I experience with my body and accessing materials as kind of the basis for how I'm approaching the mediums that I work in. So in some of my time-based media work, I create these sort of downsized sets where I am met with a lot fewer limitations than I am in sort of a full-scale natural world or traditional film set. These environments are more accessible for me to manipulate, but they still allow me to kind of capture organic movement. And I'll show you a few examples of that. And my adaptive approaches often lead me to work on this kind of microscopic scale and experiment with combining mediums. So for example, I mentioned I started as a painter, so I often incorporate ink in my film practice in pursuit of that kind of abstraction that I found previously in painting, which I kind of turned away from because it became less accessible to me as I lost hand function. And often my work also takes shape as self-portraiture. So portraits of progressive atrophy that my body experiences. I sort of create visual representations of these imperceptible changes over time. And I explore themes of illegibility inspired by my body's access to writing tools and ways of creating communication using my hands and materials that I'm with. And in some of my work, I also investigate methods of kind of representing the disabled body in realms where representations of it are largely absent. So I frequently employ signifiers of disability in conversation with objects or gestures that symbolize beauty or femininity or sensuality, or that harken back to imagery found in classical art, ultimately trying to kind of position disability within spheres and among notions where it's typically excluded, and kind of in along the lines of what I mentioned earlier of doing these things to learn from the process. I find that I often make work in an attempt to learn something. So last thing before I start sharing some images of my work, I wanted to share this quote that I came across in a book that I was reading a few weeks ago. So I encountered this quote. I heard it actually via an audiobook, and I wanted to share it with you all. So in this book called How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell, she writes, in 2015, I was asked to give a lecture on David Hockney to the docents at the De Young Museum in San Francisco. As someone who worked in digital art, I was expected to provide some perspective, but I wasn't sure if I would have anything to say. Hockney was not only a painter, but really a painter's painter. But as soon as I started researching his evolving interest in technology, not just media, but technologies of seeing, I realized I might have more to learn from Hockney than from any other artist. Hockney valued painting because of the medium's relationship to time. According to him, an image contains the amount of time that went into making it, so that when someone looked at one of his paintings, they began to inhabit the physical bodily time as it's being painted. And I really loved this quote because it actually led me to consider my work and process in a way that I hadn't really before, which is one of my favorite experiences. And of course, it sort of made me think again about that question of what is the body and sort of what role does the body play when making a piece of artwork. And so now I will show you a piece of artwork. So I'm just going to play part of this film. And when we were testing it earlier, the audio was a little bit soft, so I apologize, but turn your speakers up and I will be quiet so you can hear it. And it's also captioned so you can hear or read the dialogue. Okay.
I think it was when you were in ballet, and it was hard to find a ballet suit that fit because you had such long legs and your legs didn't fill out the tights and your waist was smaller, but for your height, the costumes that were available for you to wear, they made you look like a long, slender swan. And it was a little less like the little girl ballerinas that you were practicing with. I don't think I've said that out loud before, or maybe even said it to anybody before, but I noticed that. And you can't tell this story without going back because you were a toe walker. I thought you were a natural ballerina because you walked everywhere on your toes and you made walking look like a dance. You got dressed by yourself, and that was new because I just loved helping you get dressed in the morning. But every single morning, you would wind up getting so angry when you're putting your shoes on, and you would throw them across the room, and you were so frustrated. After the year before, you weren't really sure that you could dance for very long. And what they wanted to do is give you a role that you could accomplish, but also that again capitalized on the natural grace that you had. And so they picked the cat in Cats, Victoria, the love object. And I was stunned by, again, the motion. It was probably the most sensual character that I'd seen in the 3 years I'd watched this teacher create roles for students. And they were equally bowled over by how well you carried it off.
Okay. So that was a film that I titled Ballerina in Progression. And this is a still from the film. It's an image of myself as a child walking in a circle of other children around a maypole. The image is in sepia tone, and I'm wearing a floral dress with my hair in braids. And my face is covered by the corner of another photograph of a field of bluebells. So in reviewing this film for this event, I think I really started to think about what role does memory play in the body, and vice versa. I think I understand this film as kind of a self-portrait for myself. that I made through memory, and specifically through my mother's memory. My mother is the one who narrated the film. And in making the film, I went back and collected images of myself as a child and videos, and then filmed a little bit of my mother and I interacting today with the ballet flippers. And I think that it sort of made me think about how my understanding of my body isn't purely from my physical inhabiting of it, but through the memories that that I have through other people who have shared with me about things that I can't remember, or things that I wasn't thinking about or understanding at the time that they were happening. So I guess really what I'm doing here is posing another question, which is what role does memory play in the body, and what roles do our bodies play in our memory? So here I have another still from another film. This film is called The Hand Model. I'm not going to share it just for the sake of time, but here this is my hand lightly grasping a small orange, green leaves intact in a pose reminiscent of a gesture found in Renaissance portraiture. The background is a light blue dappled with light. And just briefly to talk about the process of making this film, this I think sort of speaks to what I mentioned earlier about my process, where I tend to learn something by making it. And so, the reason, the sort of catalyst for making this film was the experience I've had of many people throughout my life telling me, "Oh, you have such beautiful hands, you should be a hand model," which always kind of stunned me, because I have disabled hands, and you don't see a lot of disabled hands in advertising, in realms where hand modeling happens. And so I decided, I keep getting this comment over and over again, so I'm just going to pick up some objects in front of a camera and see what happens. And so in this film, I just hold different objects in front of the camera and kind of readjust my hands to grip them in various ways, which are sometimes different than how an object might traditionally be grasped, because my fingers function differently. And that's really all I was thinking about at the time that I was making it. But upon reviewing it later in a setting very much like this one, I kind of started to see these gestures as reminiscent of bodies that I had in my memory from viewing a lot of classical art. And I thought that that was a really interesting connection that I had made, that was not on purpose, and kind of the product of just using my body to interact with things, and seeing what it looked like, and how it related to other things that I had seen and was familiar with. I'm going to keep moving because I have included a lot of images in this slideshow, and I want to make sure that everyone has time. So I'm just going to talk briefly about the next few pieces, and then I'll show you another film. So this is another piece. This is not a film. This is a sculptural piece that I made called Wedding Chair. So here, two images of a power wheelchair covered in flowers. In one image, the handlebar on the back of the chair is highlighted against the white flower underneath it, and in the other, the armrests, joystick controller, and front wheel is visible amidst the flowers. And then I'm going to show the next slide, which shows a couple more angles of this piece. So this is the same power wheelchair embellished with flowers sitting atop a white rectangular display in an empty gallery. One image is showing the front of the chair, its seat is empty, and the second image shows the back of the chair. And the reason that I included this piece was actually a comment that my film professor made about the piece when I showed it to him. And we were standing in the gallery together. I was sitting, he was standing next to me, and we were with some other students, and he was asking about my decision to put the piece on this white riser that it's on. And I didn't really have a good answer, but he kind of encouraged me to think about how that object actually is language in a gallery. And it kind of causes your body to respond differently to what's in front of you when you add something like this in a gallery setting, which I thought was really interesting. And I don't have time right now to talk more about all the ways this piece evokes my body, but I think the idea of space as language for our bodies, I thought was a really interesting one that I wanted to briefly include here. I'm going to keep moving, and I think I might actually skip the next few slides so that I can show you the next film before our next artist shares with us.
Take your time.
Oh, okay.
What?
Well, I'll just briefly go through these. This is another piece that I made called Fantasy Braces. And these are a pair of leg braces gilded in gold, embellished with gold lace and jewels. So, so again, like the last work that I showed you, these are assistive technologies that are put on a white block in a gallery, and thus the body responds to them as art. And I think that that's something I'll always think about when I'm in a gallery now, is how my body is responding to things based on their kind of physical placement in the gallery. And then again here, I wore leg braces when I was a child, and to see them without my body in them is, I think, kind of, again, that process of wanting to just make something and see what I learned here. And I learned a similar thing to my film hand model, which was I just wanted to make leg braces and embellish them. And I did so, and they reminded me of the Greek mythology I read when I was a kid. And so making that connection of this kind of disability aesthetic as it relates to classical art is something that has informed my work since then. So this is the last still that I'll show you before I show you the next film. So this is a still from my film called I Can't Write. The frame is filled with smudgy, abstract blue shapes. One of the shapes kind of resembles the letter C. And if you look closely, you may be able to see, if I can get my mouse back on here, the letter C and letter A there. So, so I'll first talk about why I made this film. And I think there are two reasons, or two sort of sets of inspiration. One were the materials I was working with. So I worked a lot with 16mm film in college, which is, it's quite a process to load a film camera, shoot the film, unload it, and then get it processed and scan it. And some of those steps are difficult for me to do with my hands. It's very tedious, but I just loved doing it. And I worked in my college's library where we scanned the film. And I just wanted so badly to experiment with those materials in a way that I could. And so I took blank film leader, which is just clear plastic in a film strip, and I wrote on it. And I wrote I can't write over and over through the length of the film leader in blue Sharpie. And as I went along, the writing became progressively smudgier because it was trying to dry, and I kept moving the film, and it smudged and ended up resembling the image that you see on the screen that I described. And essentially it's this image sort of flickering in an abstract way over and over again throughout the film. And I think I was again just kind of inspired to see what would happen as throughout the process of making this, and kind of to explore in a visual sense the experience that I've had with writing technologies like pen and paper, pencil, and markers and painting, because I've had this kind of arc throughout my life where when I was younger, I was a painter. And that was kind of my identity as an artist. And then as my hands weakened, I lost the ability to write and to paint, and I turned to film and photography. And then now as an adult, after many years of not really writing anything on with pen and paper, or painting or drawing or doing anything of that sort, I randomly picked up a paintbrush and a pen and started trying to write and paint again. And I found that I sort of miraculously could do it again with ease. And I think that the process there, which I find very interesting, was the way that I was approaching holding the pen and paper, was the way that I had always done that and had been taught to do that and seen everyone do that. And now when I picked it up again after not picking it up for a long time, I hold it just slightly differently. That feels more intuitive to me, and I can write with a lot of ease now. So so I think this piece in particular just really makes me think about my body as a tool, and kind of reframing my perspective in that way has allowed me to get a little bit more creative with the tool that I have, instead of trying to use it in the only way that I thought it could be used. With that, I'm going to go ahead and show you my next film, the last one that I have here. There isn't audio. You may hear a slight hum, but there's no other audio other than that. And I encourage you to approach the process of viewing this film in kind of a meditative way. So with that, I will play it.
So I have the honor of leading us through kind of another exploratory experience, somatic experience in relationship to this piece that Michelle just shared with us and created. And I believe the title of this piece is How Did We Get Here? And so as we take in the image and the experience of our bodies taking in this film, we ask ourselves, how did we get here? And there's both the personal arrival, and then there's also the collective arrival into this moment. And what's in my body heavily today is how did we get yet again to this moment of losing another Black man here in this country, Dante Wright. In Minnesota, simultaneously, there is the trials of Derek Chauvin, right? The police who murdered George Floyd. It's happening in Minnesota, Minnesota Makoche. There's the resistance up in the northern landscapes and water bodies that are trying to stop the Line 3 pipeline. We experienced the loss of LaDonna Brave Bull Allard, who's a really important Dakota water protector who was influential in Standing Rock yesterday. We've lost hundreds of thousands to this pandemic. How did we get here? So I'd like us to activate our Ujjayi breath in this moment. It's a breath technique inside of yoga where we inhale through the nose, allowing for a little bit of restriction to come at the back of the throat, making audible our breath. And we also exhale with sealed lips with that same restriction to keep the breath present in our space and in ourselves. And if we can, let's try to inhale slowly for around 6 counts. Exhale for around 8 counts. Again, inhale. Exhale. As you breathe, what is the state or current of activation you're experiencing in your body? Continue to breathe. Where is it located? Whatever that resonance of activation is. Is it in your hands? Is it in our chest? Is it in our shoulders or our backs? How does it feel Describe its sensation. Is it hot? Is it prickly? Or is it heavy? Take a moment to notice and assess that current, that frequency, with as little judgment as we can in this moment. Is it running quickly or really slow? Is it hard to pin down? Continue to breathe. Use your hands in this moment and allow your hands to touch the area where you feel like that activation or that current is maybe generating from or lodging itself into. And if it's moving to multiple places, it's okay to move your hands. You don't have to pick one place. And with your hands there, ask that thing that you are holding, that current, that state of activation, to enter into your palms. Use your hands to bring them together. You can continue to close your eyes and imagine this in your head, or if you'd like, maybe look into your palms. Using your mind's eye to see it, whatever it is. Doubt, anger, uncomfortability, vulnerability, grief. Maybe you came from something exciting and beautiful, and so what you're holding in your body is love or joy. But again, take time to notice its texture, its shape, its color. Does it have a weight or a pulse? Or a name? Continue to breathe as you sit with what you're holding. And whatever it is that we're holding, we're now going to enter into a process of transforming and releasing. And so activating the elements of air and the elements of water, we're going to use our breath to inhale and exhale. Remembering that as we exhale, we actually release more water through the vapor of our breath than we take in with our inhales. So air, inhale. Conjuring water, we exhale. And then using our hands, rubbing them together to create friction and heat. You could also maybe rub it against another part of our body. You can rub it quickly or slowly, bigly or smallly. We activate fire. Maybe it feels good to activate via sound. Allowing heat to flow through that which we are holding, to take new shape, to transform. And then finally, we're gonna take our hands and plant them back into our bodies. Maybe giving ourselves an embrace, conjuring earth. Transformation that happens in our soils as things get submitted into it. Taking joy in the possibility of new growth. Potential for transformed landscapes. And with that, we'll release ourselves from the experience. Maybe brush, use your hands or your breath to brush your body. Maybe brush your chest, brush your legs, brush your hands, your heart, your hair. So my name is Kealoha Ferreira. I am a Native Hawaiian, Asian American woman who's sitting in her living room. I'm sitting on a gray couch. I'm wearing a button-down short sleeve shirt with white and orange printing on it. I have some pictures on my walls and a plant in my corner of my space. I am a dance artist based in Minnesota Makoche. I am part of a dance company called Ananya Dance Theater, and we are a BIPOC, femme-led organization where we tell the stories of global BIPOC communities, specifically to plant hope and also to share stories of transformation and also add to the lineage of justice and social justice. So I come to this conversation inside of that practice in the context of dance and social justice. And I guess another context that I bring is that of my culture, or where I feel like I come from, which is Hawaii. I'm part Native Hawaiian. And the practices specifically of oli, of chant, and chanting is what I'm learning about, and of hula, and its relationship to environment and landscape. So the things that I practice a dance form that is specifically called yorcha. it's a contemporary dance form that was created by Ananya Chatterjee of Ananya Dance Theater, and also developed with the bodies of the artists who were or are part of the company. So the form utilizes yoga and a martial arts form called Chel, which comes from the state of Odisha in India, and also a traditional dance form called Odissi, which also comes from that same part of India. And the form was created specifically to be able to articulate the stories of BIPOC communities, because the context of dance, which Ananya primarily came from, which was Odissi, she found often wasn't quite enough to be able to articulate the fullness of that experience, right? Like the fullness, the articulation of that rage, or the articulation of that of maybe birthing, and of work, and of joy, as well as of beauty. And so this is the form that occupies my body and that teaches me about how to be in the world. My experience with this form is that of kind of transnational feminism lineages of coming into understanding ourselves through difference. So I grew up dancing primarily ballet and other kinds of Western forms of dance. And then this particular form was a complete new experience when I started moving with the company and learning it. And it kind of unleashed for me this huge spiral into questions around colonization, and also what would be the practice of decolonizing my body. And it was inside of this form that, I learned about transnational feminisms, that I learned about myself. I had grown up in Hawaii, but I had never, I'd always kept a really strong distance from hula, because I was afraid of the implications of being seen inside of that cultural context. And the first time that I danced Orisi was the first time that I felt like, oh wow, I feel like this is in some ways a relative of hula. So yeah, the practice of learning, coming into ourselves through difference, and then also the practice of finding solidarity and feeling like we can use dance or movement or lessons from our body to actually learn what solidarity feels like every day. And to also learn or potentially activate what does liberation also feel like every day. Because I get to practice with a diverse group of people, and they bring with them their histories, they bring with them their lived experiences, and all of that gets thrown into the space and negotiation of space as we move together, and as we work together. And so the practice of building relationships and being able to share weight, being able to articulate struggle and articulate pain, and then to also have it be transformed in the moment through our breath and through sweat, is part of my own experience of what yeah, what the process of liberation can potentially look like, what that shape could potentially look like or feel like. I have probably more things to continue to say, but I wanted us to potentially dive into another experience. Yes, sorry. Okay. Another experience of using our body to, in this moment, conjure and ground ourselves in how to show up for each other, how to show up in our world, and how to show up for the world that we want to see and that we know is possible. So take yourself back to the blessing that you wrote or that you created in the land acknowledgement. And if you weren't here for that land acknowledgement experience, the question was just in relationship to what is it that you want to amplify in your landscape. So maybe take a look outside or a look around you in this moment. If you notice the rain, or if you notice the wind, or if you notice any type of landscape movement that you would like to amplify, and just take note of that. But we'll bring ourselves back into this blessing that we wrote or that we created. And take a moment to maybe close your eyes again. And enter into that blessing, enter into that image, and let the image amplify. So whatever it was, maybe it was the fragrance of magnolias. Maybe it was the rushing of clear and clean water, cold water from the Mississippi. As it amplifies, allow the image to also expand to who might the people be that are with you? Who are the people that are with you in this moment? And what are you doing together? What are the sounds? What are the colors? What are the scents? What plants might be with you and around you? What is abundant? So stay in this place. Stay in this place. And this is where I'd like us to push ourselves to try to keep our cameras on, but also to utilize our body to create the shape of a couple of different states. So first, I'd like us to create the shape, find a way to create the shape of alignment in this image. So maybe it's using your arms or your elbows or your joints. Maybe your palms are open. Maybe it's your whole body, or maybe it's just the shape of alignment that maybe is in your hands. So alignment being, what are we reaching towards and what are we connecting? Is it rigid or is it soft? Does it move? What are we aligning ourselves with so that this space can live and breathe and be a reality? It is a reality. Okay, what is the shape now, potentially, of vulnerability in this landscape? So knowing that we can be our full selves, and that we can be protected and cared for in this space. What would it be like to show up in vulnerability? And what shape does vulnerability take in this moment? Nice. What is protection in this moment? What is the shape of protection for this place, for the people that are in it? And you can move it, you can try things around. Finally, let's create an action. What is an action that we can do with ourselves in the bodies that we are in, what we're able to do in this moment that will take us together to that place? And it can be an abstract movement. Maybe it feels good to just clap. That's my action, to conjure this moment and bring it into reality. Maybe it's taking a moment to stand up or lean forward or reach in. Nice. And let's take an inhale and exhale, clearing ourselves of that experience. And I'll pass it on to Ayako.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Care. And thank you, everybody, for being here today. My name is Ayako Kato. I'm a dancer and choreographer originally from Japan. Today I'm wearing black shirt and yellow scarf, and in my background I have bamboo forest, which I took picture in Kamakura, Japan. Yes, and so I would like to present what is the body. Yes, so I am going to show you my dance video I finished 2014. I took about 4 years to create this piece. It's called The Incidents. And my theme for this piece was our movement really matters. All the moment is the only one and never comes back. And also like our fingertips, if we move, as you know, butterfly effect, one flip of butterfly wing can cause a tornado on the next day on the other side of the globe or something. So I thought of it. Then actually, originally, I lost my friend because of cancer, and she talked about the ripple, how the love goes, bigger, expand as a ripple. Then I started to think of the ripple effect, and also I started to be interested in the similarity between us. We have this body and we have right side, left side, and we have arms and legs. And so when I started to do mirroring and reverse mirroring, I encountered to this Euclidean isometry mirror combinations. So yeah, let's watch. So basically, I'm looking for a common ground between ourselves beyond differences. And this work is a recent one. I presented 2019. It's called To the Shore Ethos Episode 1. So let's look at this. Influenced by Marshall, I keep dancing. Useless, useless, useless. Dance. Yet here, there is a logical line of reasoning. The continuum of elemental particles.
The song that I came to sing remains unsung to this day. I've spent my days in stringing and in unstringing my instrument. The blossom has not opened. Only the wind is sighing by. I have not seen his face, nor have I listened to his voice. Only the footsteps. But this meeting is not yet.
Thank you. Yeah, so the last poem she was reciting, probably some people noticed, it's from Tagore. She herself is Bengali, and her parents moved to the United States. She herself was born in the United States. Then when you, for example, I choreographed, when the people are doing, raising their hands and dropping the sand particle. And as I was talking about elemental particle, we all die someday and go back to the wind, soil. Our body will decay and will be gone. But we, exist, keep existing actually as part of the nature and universe. That's I believe. Then, so I would say the body is a part of nature and nature itself. And unfortunately, as Care has been expressing, the capitalism really takes away a lot from us, and we easily can forget in our busy daily life. Then I myself grew up doing ballet, 15 years and entering competition. And you may think why Japanese girls do ballet. But as you know, there's so many beautiful ballerinas, Japanese ballerinas, you know. But Japan, after they opened the country around 1853, westernization, modernization, and militarization became the goal of the country. And as you know, historically, a lot of wrongdoing as well as sad, very sad historical incidents have been happening. But on the other hand, there is something good thing nurtured in Japan. And this Edo period haiku poet Basho is my inspiration. And in college, I was wondering why Japanese people are ambiguous, and I need to explain the beauty of ambiguity of Japanese people to the Western people. Then I started to write my thesis about furyu, which is wind flow in Japanese, and cyclical transformation and motion in nature. And I encountered Basho's writing, and he was saying, there is something in my body which keeps swaying and easily whipped by wind. Because of this, I ended up becoming a useless poet. Follow nature, be one with nature. And as you have heard in my ethos piece, I myself felt when I read this, actually I quit ballet because I felt I shouldn't be dancing around and I should be more useful for the society. But when I read this, the thing is dance, and that moves me, and that, that is my identity, I noticed. And after that, actually, I took 5 more years to go back to dance. But since then, I have been, pursuing what is food, what is wind flow, what is the dignity of people, and I try to actualize and give form of intangible and invisible energies to focus on the ephemeral but eternal dignity and beauty of life bestowed within each individual and all humanity through nature and the universe. So that's I have been aiming at. Then to realize through our body and through my work, I have been thinking a lot and practicing a lot. And this is a diagram I created to explain how I perceive the world through my body. So I feel our body perceive constantly what's happening around us. And we perceive through our body future, past, sky, ground, and synchronic events around us. And if you place yourself in the center, I consider, through the sagittal line, future and past. And as you see, your future is also coming through you, and past is also coming through you and heading to the future. And you are conduit. Your body is the conduit between heaven and earth. And in Japanese flower arrangement, we say the word ikeru, enliven. You make yourself enliven, make you live in that moment and between heaven and earth. And synchronic horizontal plane we are carrying all the time. And when we recognize our center through our consciousness to unconsciousness, and seeing, sensing, hearing, and smelling, feeling, when we recognize our center, we also recognize others' center. And others have this sphere also, and relationship within and around the environment. And and we can metaphorically become, as a dancer, I feel I can be metaphorically become the sand particle. But is that really metaphor? No. As I said, we go back to the particle again. So it's reality. And principles, if we drop sand, that drops. If we drop ourselves, we drop. So principles are working in our body, through our body, right? And as Michelle presented, always transforming, constantly. So we are fractal of nature and the universe. That's how I'm feeling. And this diagram chart I created for my dancers, actually. And finally, after 22 years, I started to be confident to call my technique like wind flow technique or wind flow movement. Then the basic of, wind flow movement, I would say, is emptiness. You need to let go, physically, mentally, to be, to feel yourself, true yourself, you need to be really empty. That's how I feel. And interestingly, like not only Basho, but John Cage, whom I respect. I feel he also achieved this emptiness. And so what I do is sculpting the air, reading the air, always actualize the worldview which I showed, and multicentrism and multidimensional vision, seeing and being seen, fractal metaphor, and I feel entity of 5 elements of nature and beyond. Then when I cast out this as tensegrity, tensegrity is tension and integrity, and Thomas Mayer, the scholar of tensegrity, or my fascia meridian, talks about it. Then, so rather than looking at each muscle fibers, he perceived the body as the connected one whole, and this is the tensegrity model you are seeing. And and the tensegrity model is interesting. If you push a little bit here and there, all the structure changes. So that is connected to the principle of your movement matters. As an individual, if we do something that affects whole people, whole society, eventually, so ripple effect as well. Yes. Then, the body is the conduit to actualize the intangible into the tangible. Your movement matters. Yes. So now I would like to gather. I hope there's time. Let's start to take your feet. So first, like any positioning is fine. And I would like you to use your imagination and imagining the sphere, sagittal, coronal, and horizontal plane. Then let's do this exercise. So any positioning, sitting, standing is great. Danten is located 3 fingers below the navel. So let's feel the danten. 2 fingers inside of your body. Okay. Then also, please be aware of your sit bones. Vertically, like pendulum, hanging to the ground. And let's inhale from the top of your head to your danten. And exhale out from the top of it. When you inhale from the top of the head to your danten, and when you exhale, please imagine that air goes through your axis of the legs. So here you go. Inhale to your dantian and exhale through the ground. And you can place your hands now easy, arms hanging. Inhale and exhale. And now inhale again. And now from your dantian, exhale through your fountain shape through your fingertips. Let's do again. Inhale from the top of the head to your dantian. And exhale through the foundation. And now let's start out the 3 plane patterns. Here we go. Inhale and exhale. Lift up the space around you. This is coronal plane. And tap the energy in from the top of the head to your dantian. And extend your fingers to the front. And bring arms to the side and see the back space through the eyes on your palms. Feel the space all the way, and now pacify the air down and reach your fingertips to the ground. Then tap in the energy from the center of your heel through your axis of the legs, and the energy meets in your dantian, and you scoop up the energy, and your pinkies are touching and spiraling, and all the way up, and naturally pinky rotates, and paint your favorite color in front of your sagittal plane. Second time. Now imagine your skeleton and wind going through between your fingers. And you are in a beautiful X and tapping the air energy through the top of the head, through your dantian to the ground, and extend your fingertips to the front, and imagine endless space in front of you beyond where you are, and divide the space. So you are also sculpting the space. So this is horizontal plane. So think of others now doing the same exercise and connect with them. Then again, pacify. Now reach through the core of the earth. Then, like magma, coming up through the axis of your legs and through your dantian, and all the way up and exiting from the top of the head. Then, sagittal. Third time, dig under, extend the line all the way. You are like tree, grounded all the way to the sky, and tapping in heaven and earth, and extend. All the space around you. You are seeing through your body, and pacify down. You start to be transparent, but your entity exists, and receiving the energy from the earth, and all the way up through you, your conduit, and you reach all the way to the front. Okay, great. So, yeah, life is the art of being. So let's really use ourselves and let's get through this. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for presenting. This was such a wonderful experience. I feel like my body needed that. So thank you so much. We're going to just open up the floor to any questions, from the audience or from the artists themselves. So it's open now.
Questions, comments as well.
I just want to thank everybody for presenting. This has been great. I've been looking forward to this. And I'm sorry I was late. I was teaching a class. But what a wonderful experience. I'm thinking, I'm a writer and performer, so I think about like the power of exposing the Black body and exposing skin, and during performances, right? The body is really important to me, in the way that hands are used in performance. I had a director tell me, you really like your hands, but it's interesting for others and how to work with the body. I'm also thinking, I'm reminded of Molly McCauley Brown, the disabled poet, and she refers to herself as that, and Catholic, and her work through poetry. And illuminating disability and the ways that we expect and don't expect the body to move, and how we've really been, we have some reckoning to do. Someone was talking about today's reckonings. I haven't caught up with everything in the news, but it's just so much to think about. And then, of course, this sort of idea that Ayako was just talking about, the groundedness of the body and how we're really, really connected and how that works. It's the first time I've really kind of considered how that works. It's nice to think poetically, but it's nice to have someone break it down. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shaniqua. I just want to say thank you to all of you that have presented. I gained a bit of insight more about the body and how it's used, especially in performance. I tend to use weaving as my vehicle of making, which is a very old and traditional craft. And expanding and learning different ways of weaving, which involves a great deal of the body and a lot of repetition and lack of movement in the sense of the whole body, only like the foot and the hands are actively moving. But it just reminded me of this sense of when Michelle was talking about her disability, how the core of my body is sometimes disabled, not necessarily in a aspect that I can't move it in a way that all of us can move it, but in the sense of when I'm working, how it's on pause or it's broken down in a different way, or is it stagnant? It's not really having much blood flow through it in an active way as my foot and my hands are constantly moving. And it made me think of that in that way, but also interpret the way Ayako and Kealoha, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name, but how to also come back and ground and center, and also in the spiritual realm of affirmation and manifestation in one's life outside of my art practice, but a way of living as an individual and a human being on this earth. So thank you, thank you, thank you. A lot of gems have been dropped today, so I greatly appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Something that came up for me in listening today, actually during Michelle's conversation or presentation, was my relationship, or all of ours relationship to our bodies changing over time in relationship to our art practice. That was just really powerful for me in considering how your body got to the kind of tool it is currently, and then constantly being in conversation with how our bodies change organically, or what we've done to change our bodies, and how our bodies are going to change over time in relationship to what we're creating or what we're producing or how we're using our body. So yeah, that was something that I was really grateful for.
Ayako, I remember having some of this conversation a year ago when we first went remote, all virtual, about dance being of the body and what does that mean in a virtual realm. And let's see if I can articulate this. I wonder about your understandings now a year later. I was trying to remember the Merleau-Ponty example, where the right finger touches the left hand, but then the finger of the left hand touches the right finger. And so the touching seemingly becomes negated, but it actually creates another kind of consciousness of touch.
Yeah.
And in education, the narrative so often about virtual has all been framed very negatively. But in fact, I think we've seen a lot of things be discovered through this supposed negation. So I wonder if you've had thoughts now a year later about any kind of new consciousness of the body within this supposed negation of the virtual realm. Does that make sense?
I try my best. So I think there are differences between adults and children. Definitely, I have been feeling for children, it's totally in a way different. But I have been witnessing magical moments of how they are seeing and capturing and doing in the way I am teaching, even though I am a big advocate of how touching works. And if you even just like acknowledgement, right? And actually I use that for adults, asking them to touch by themselves, like praising and, acknowledging. But yeah, even though this relationship, through virtual, I feel still we can access and sense. So as I said, our body is seeing, and it's practice definitely, and depending on the people, different degrees of experience they go through, but I think it's possible to sense each other even through virtual world.
We just said the body is seeing. That's a beautiful phrase. I think about maybe a kind of heightened way the body is seen within the virtual realm. And I certainly experienced that with all the presentations. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I had a question for Ayako and Michelle, because Michelle, okay, Ayako, when you talked about the first kind of process, maybe in your wind flow technique is about emptiness, and it immediately makes me think about the exhale, and how we can, I mean, inhale is like you can feel the expansion, you can feel the edges, and then the exhale, when we really get to the exhale, it's like, whoa, whereas like all that space that we have internally. And what I feel like I was reminded of when I was watching your film, How Do We Get Here, Michelle, was in a lot of ways the revelation of the exhale, of like the intricacies, right? Like we could see it as something degenerating, or we could see it as the intricacies of the connections being revealed. And I guess I'm just wondering uh, what that kind of emptiness or that kind of motion of coming in or degenerating maybe means for you both. What does it teach you?
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead.
That's a tough question. I'm not sure if I have a full answer, but I love that connection that you drew. I think I didn't speak much about that film, but like I said about the other pieces I made, I really was exploring with materials and I didn't have anything in mind when I made it other than the materials I was using and finding an image that was interesting to me. And then it was later when I looked at it and spoke about it with people that I realized what it meant to me in terms of representing my experience and like the narrative of how my body has changed. And I hadn't thought about it in the way that you just described too, and I really like that. And I think I like that framing of it as revealing these intricacies and like patterns, I think, and the relationship of interaction, because the materials I used, I mixed red ink with Dawn dish soap, and the way that it dried in that pattern is kind of reveals the relationship between those two materials as they interact over time. And yeah, those are the thoughts that are coming to mind in response to the question you posed.
So for me, emptiness is openness, and to allow other things to come in, we need to be empty, I feel. And by making ourselves empty, the wind flows, right? Like go through and cyclical, like, yeah. Then you recognize so much by opening up yourself to others and other things. It's not rejection, right? Like but of course, like to be empty, we need to be stronger, right? Because we need to welcome. But yeah, and I think in the meeting, actually, when we had a meeting, we talked about borderlessness, yeah. So that kind of thing I could think of, yeah, to what you asked.
I just saw the relationship, sorry, between what you're saying about emptiness and like how, especially I think in this very capitalist driven society, fullness is the embodiment, right? That maybe we're most familiar with or always striving towards versus I think the feeling of vulnerability in allowing ourselves to be empty.
Yeah.
And then also that can speak to, I think, the intersections of how we also think about abilities and ableism as well. Like we just the expectation that a particular kind of embodiment of fullness is what is means to be fully able, right? Or to versus being okay with the interstices, like being in a place where we can practice emptying ourselves or finding that smallness. Yeah, go on.
Sorry. But the openness and emptiness is fullness for me. Yeah.
Mm,
When you let go, you
mm,
know, you gain and actually
mm,
you realize who you are more actually
mm,
when you abandon your ego, something, you're, gripping, then when you let go, you can actually have opportunity to be full, and you realize you are not alone and you are connecting with everything, and you can define among all the other things who you are. So you become full actually when you open and when you empty. That's I feel. Yes.
That's so beautiful, Ayako. And I feel that statement and also that connection, Kay, is a really great place to leave this conversation for now. Thank you so much to our presenters for such a dynamic way of having this conversation. We've explored what is the body, I feel, in so many ways over the last 2 hours. So we are all very grateful for that. If anyone's interested in any of the slides or videos that, or description of exercises that our presenters have shared today, just feel free to email myself or Jenny. We'll be sure to, with the artist's permission, to get you whatever is available. Please stay tuned for any more dialogue series that CAPE has to offer for the remainder of the year. And again, so grateful for sharing space with you all tonight. And we will see you all at the next one.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great rest of your week, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Emma.
you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Yay. Okay, good night, everyone.